Today we're looking at Aristotle's golden mean, the art of balance, essentially. So Aristotle is obviously a famous philosopher, isn't he? And one of his ideas was the concept of this golden mean. And it's one of the most significant ideas in human behavior or ethics. It's a framework for living a balanced life by avoiding extremes, maybe finding a middle ground in everything we do. Aristotle thought that achieving this balance leads to what's called eudaimonia, which is the good life, a life of joy, fulfillment, and virtue. Aristotle discussed this in his book, The Nicomachean Ethics. He obviously introduced virtue ethics as a framework and understood that building good character came by cultivating virtues. If you're a murderer, you're probably not going to have the best of characters. Whereas if you're a generous person, maybe you will. The activity of the soul then sets us apart from everything else. So, what the golden mean is, and what Aristotle meant by this balance, is that virtue actually lies between two vices. So, either end is actually still a vice, but the middle is the virtue. And those ends of the spectrum are excess or deficiency. So, as an example, courage would sit in the middle, whereas recklessness would be on the excess side and cowardice on the deficient side. So, to be virtuous, you would be courageous, but you wouldn't be overly courageous to the point of being reckless, and you wouldn't lack courage in respect of being a coward. That's what he meant by the golden mean. The problem is when you act too recklessly, you can put yourself and others in danger, and actually, you maybe haven't thought about all of the potential outcomes. If you're someone who is a coward, you might lack opportunities for growth. You might uh, shy away from challenges, or maybe you don't even voice your own opinion. Maybe it's a case of ambition being the golden mean of obsession and laziness. Obviously, if you are lazy, you'll do nothing and you'll remain unproductive. If, on the other hand, you're obsessed, maybe you may burn out and work too much. You might not sleep enough, and actually, over time, that can cause issues. Now, I'm not saying not to be obsessed in respect of you are obsessed with some end goal, but not obsession to the point that you are burning out. If you're building your own business, consider this. If they overwork, they never get time to rest, and they haven't delegated effectively, they might get health problems and strained relationships. If they underwork, they may see no growth in the business and they may get frustrated. Finding the middle ground and balance is key. It might be a case of assertiveness versus patience. It could be a case of honesty versus being too blunt or lying. Obviously, if you're lying, that's wrong. If you're being too blunt, you're probably hurting people's feelings and not actually thinking about the ramifications of what you're saying. And honesty sits in the middle. Maybe it's confidence being the middle ground between self-deprecation and arrogance. Maybe it's generosity being the middle ground between stinginess and being too generous. And frittering things away. Maybe it's a case of patience. Is patience the middle ground between impulsiveness and apathy? And finally, temperance, is that the middle ground between indulgence and self-deprivation? So you can see that the middle ground is the way, really. And we can use this in our daily lives. Can we identify the extremes in our lives that we're leaning too far towards? Are you under prioritizing your health? Are you too aggressive in conversations or too passive? Once you've identified these extremes, maybe you can work out a plan to strive to find the middle ground. If you're working too much and not seeing your family enough, maybe you need to set boundaries. Or on the flip side, if you're being too lazy, seeing family and friends too much, you maybe need to set time aside to work. It's a lifelong pursuit, this, and actually, it's not just the action, but the reflection of things. The reflection of whatever we do is the most important part of the work, actually. Because unless we reflect, how can we ever learn anything? So when we've learned about this golden mean and finding that middle ground, that virtue, we will find eudaimonia, a life of happiness and fulfillment. When you can conquer yourself, you create the foundation for a balanced, virtuous life, not only for you, but everyone around you. Keep reflecting, keep learning, keep growing, and find your virtue.